A few months before the COVID lockdown, my flatmate Cerise and I decided it was time to get someone new into the apartment. There was a spare room that neither of us were using, and we were both running short on cash, so we figured a new buddy to help pay rent would be a good idea. Most of the candidates were a definite no. Too shifty, no sense of humor, or just plain weird. But when Benedict turned up, we knew he was someone special. Benedict had the palest skin I'd ever seen, was impossibly intelligent, and so very charismatic. When he talked to you, it was like you were the only person in the world. I mean, I'm straight, but this guy made me question that from the moment I met him. His charm was magnetic. When you looked into his eyes, it was as if you were being hypnotized. He was even happy to live with my pet rats, Lucy and Arthur. A lot of people have a problem with them, but those little rodents are my best buds, and I won't let anything come between us. So, Benedict moved in, and things were great for a while. He was the perfect housemate, but kept odd hours. He worked night shifts and slept all through the day. Cerise and I would catch him in the early evening or sometimes before the sun came up, if we'd woken up early. He never told us what exactly he did at night, but apparently it was messy, because he went through a lot of detergent constantly washing his clothes. Our little community worked perfectly. Myself, Cerise, Benedict, and my two darling rats. But then came COVID. Here in France, the government set a curfew. Everyone had to be home by 6 p.m. No more nightlife. The streets were bare. Benedict did not like this one bit. He'd pace around anxiously with eyes like a wild dog that was starving. Although his night work had seemingly been cancelled, as he never left the house anymore, he kept to his usual odd hours, staying up all night and disappearing into his darkened room during the daytime. Benedict was gradually getting skinnier, skeletal, and Cerise and I began to get worried. We noticed that he never bought any food. It seemed he never ate. Had it always been this way? He would tell us endlessly how hungry he was, looking at us if he might pounce and dig into our very flesh. But every time we offered him food, he said he didn't want it. He didn't feel like it. It was infuriating. Then one day, I got home from work late. The sun had just set, and I had to hurry to be inside before curfew. I found Benedict sprawled out across the couch. He looked healthier all of a sudden, less skinny, more life in his pale cheeks, and he looked happier, but too happy, blissed out like he was on drugs or something. His pitch-black pupils were huge and seemed to be pulsating at the edges. "Are you all right?" I asked. I ate," he said. It's been a long time since I ate." He wiped what looked like chocolate sauce off his statuesque chin. He seemed weird, so I thought I'd let him be. It was time to feed my favorite little friends, my rats Lucy and Arthur, but they weren't in their cage. In fact, the door to the cage was wide open. Shoot, I thought. I must have left it open. They must have escaped. Lucy and Arthur meant so much to me. I was really freaking out. I started looking everywhere. "Benedict," I asked, "have you seen my rats?" Benedict shook his head and slunk back into his room in some kind of blissed-out daze. I had to find them. They were my best friends, even if they were rodents. If I were a rodent, where would I go? The garbage bins. I ran out of my apartment and made my way to the dumpsters. I found Lucy and Arthur inside, but I immediately wish I hadn't. They looked like two hairy and deflated balloons, dry and wrinkled like they'd had the juice sucked out of them. I took their poor little bodies in my hands. They were so light. They felt empty. Their tiny black eyes sunk into their sockets. Rats don't have the most expressive faces, but I know fear when I see it, and Lucy and Arthur surely died terrified, their jaws contorted and frozen into the shapes of their last desperate whimpers. Just as the tears began to flow, a scream pierced the air. I knew that voice. It was Cerise. I sprinted back up to the apartment, bounding up the stairs 3 at a time. The apartment was quiet when I got there, but the yell I had heard was one of absolute terror. I knocked on Cerise's door. "Yes?" came the voice from the other side. "Are you okay?" I asked. "Of course. Why wouldn't I be?" Something was different about her voice. Not quite the Cerise I knew. Is that you, Cerise?" "Who else would it be? It's my room." That was definitely not her laugh. "Let me see you, just so I know you're okay." The door opened a crack, just enough for me to see a thin strip of her face on the other side. "Happy now?" said the voice, but her lips hadn't moved. Her eye, the one that I could see, was not focusing on me. It was staring blankly into nothingness, without the slightest twitch in her pupil. Then I felt something warm trickle into the fabric of my socks, seeping its way through the crack of the door. Blood. I pushed open the door to see the most ghastly puppet show you could imagine. Benedict was holding Cerise's dead body, gripping it by the back of her head. He'd pressed the corpse up to the crack in the door to fool me, and done that awful charade of her voice. "I can explain," he said, as her body slumped limply to the ground, blood still dripping off Benedict's perfectly chiseled chin. Shot through with terror, I started backing off, but he darted past me with superhuman speed and slammed the door, locking us both in. You're... Benedict finished my sentence. "A vampire. Yes, I'm sorry I ate your rats. And your friend. I was hungry, and they were all... just delicious." I shut my eyes and tried to pretend it was all a nightmare. No, he said. "You don't need to be afraid of me. I've eaten now. I've no need to drain you. Besides, I only ate Lucy, Arthur, and Cerise due to the circumstance. I generally have a rule that I don't snack on friends, but this lockdown curfew has really gotten in the way of my hunts. Nobody's out at night anymore. What is a bloodsucker like me to do?" "And what happens when you get hungry again?" I asked. "Am I next on the menu?" I see why you might be concerned," he said with his velvety voice. "But I think we may help each other. Say, you've got that swipe card to get into your grandmother's nursing home, don't you? Why don't I hold on to that for a while? Make sure I don't get hungry again. Don't worry. You're my friend. I'll leave your grandma alone. I do hope she has lots of tasty friends, though." If you like these scary stories, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Either way, you won't be escaping from the Fear Zone.